Elena had always loved open land, wide, quiet, endless places where she could feel the breeze move across her skin like a soft hand. She had traveled to many places for her wildlife photography work, but nothing felt like the wide cattle ranges of the West. The land stretched so far that it almost felt like the sky touched the ground. Every morning she woke up excited, ready to capture the life of animals, the shapes of mountains, and the colors of the sunrise. This trip was meant to be simple. Follow a real cattle rancher for a week, document daily life, and show people the beauty of the world outside cities. She expected hard work, dust, tired feet. Yes. But danger? Not really. She didn't think the earth under her boots could surprise her. She didn't think one wrong step could change an entire day. Cal Turner walked ahead of her that morning, calm and steady, the way a man becomes after spending most of his life outdoors. He didn't talk much. He didn't explain himself unless he needed to. But he always looked out for her, even if she didn't ask him to. Elena would often catch him glancing back to make sure she was not too far behind or stepping into something unsafe. He carried the quiet strength of someone who trusted the land more than people. They were following a small group of cattle across a ridge. The sun was still rising, making the ground glow gold. Elena lifted her camera again and again, unable to stop taking photos. She loved the way Cal moved with his horse, slow and balanced, as if he and the animal shared one mind. She captured the dust trails, the soft morning light, the calm faces of cattle. But then she saw something below the ridge, a small herd of wild mustangs running freely across the open valley. Her heart jumped. She had always hoped to capture mustangs in motion. Without thinking, she took a few steps toward the edge to get a clearer view. That was when the ground shifted. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sound of the earth breaking, no crack or sudden collapse. It was simply a soft, quiet slide. Dirt loosening under her boots, stones rolling away, gravity taking control. One moment she was standing, steady and excited. The next, she felt her feet slipping, her body leaning forward, the world tilting. "Elena!" she heard Cal shout from ahead, but everything was already moving too fast. She slid down the slope, not falling sharply, but losing control inch by inch. The dirt was loose and dry, and it carried her with it. She tried to grab something, grass, rocks, anything, but her fingers slipped. Her camera swung from her neck, hitting her chest. She felt her leg twist in a strange angle as she tried to stop herself, and pain shot through her sharply. It didn't break her completely, but it was enough to make her gasp. The slide finally stopped when she hit a patch of denser brush halfway down the slope. She froze there, shocked by the sudden stillness. For a few seconds, she didn't move. She just breathed, heart pounding, dust floating in the sunlight around her. The mustangs were long gone. Her world had narrowed to the pain in her leg and the uneven ground under her body. Cal was already climbing down toward her. He moved fast, but carefully, using his experience to find firm ground. His horse waited at the top, watching with patient eyes. Cal reached her in less than a minute, but to her, it felt like much longer. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low but filled with concern. He didn't shout now. Shouting was for moments of panic, and Cal believed panic made everything worse. I think so," Elena said, though her breath trembled. She tried to shift her leg slightly, and pain shot through her again. "No, it hurts. It really hurts." Cal knelt beside her and studied her leg without touching it yet. He could see she was in pain, but he didn't want to make it worse. He pressed his hand on the ground near her boot to check how stable the slope was. The dirt was soft, but not sliding anymore. "Looks like the angle got you wrong," he said quietly. "Probably a bad sprain. Maybe worse. But we're getting you out of here." Elena nodded, swallowing hard. She trusted him, even though she didn't know him well. There was something steady about him, something she felt even stronger now that she was hurt. He finally placed his hand on her leg, gently, carefully, but even that gentle touch made her hiss in pain. "You're hurting me," she moaned, trying not to sound like she was complaining, but the pain was sharp, unavoidable. Cal stopped immediately. He didn't apologize because Cal Turner was not a man who used many soft words. Instead, he took a slow breath, as if steadying himself, then leaned closer so she could hear him clearly over her own pounding heartbeat. "I know," he whispered, "and I'm sorry. But we need to move you, Elena. There's no other way. This land won't let us wait for someone else to get here. I don't want to hurt you, but getting you out is going to take strength. And strength is the only force I know, but I promise, I'll be as careful as I can." His words weren't poetic or practiced. They were real, almost heavy, like they came from a place inside him he didn't usually show people. Something in his voice told her that he hated seeing her in pain, even more than she realized. Elena looked up at him, dust on her cheeks, sunlight catching her eyes. She believed him. She believed that he wouldn't let her stay in danger. She believed he would do everything he could to carry her out of this. "Okay," she whispered. "I trust you." Cal nodded once, firm, silent, grateful. He slid one arm under her back and the other beneath her knees, testing her reaction. She tensed from the pain, but she didn't pull away. He moved slowly, aware of every one of her breaths, every small sound she made. The slope was still uneven, and he had to keep balance not only for himself, but for her. It was a careful task, and every step mattered. As he lifted her, she felt a pressure in her leg that made her whimper softly. Cal paused, letting her breathe through it. "You're doing good," he murmured. "We'll get through this." He started moving upward, step by steady step. The climb was not easy. The land seemed to push against them. He pressed his heel into firm patches, avoiding loose dirt. Elena leaned against his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath the dust-covered fabric of his shirt. It felt like the most reliable sound in the world. Every few steps, she would let out a soft sound of pain. Each time, Cal would adjust his hold slightly, giving her a moment before continuing. The sun climbed higher, warming the air, but Cal felt none of it. Every ounce of his attention was on the woman in his arms and the ground beneath his boots. By the time they neared the top, Elena's breathing was shallow, tired from the pain. But she wasn't afraid. Not with Cal carrying her the way he did, strong, steady, careful, even if his strength came with rough edges. When he finally stepped onto flat ground again, he let out a slow breath, almost like relief. His horse walked closer on its own, as if it knew something had happened. Cal lowered Elena gently onto a blanket he quickly pulled from his saddlebag. She winced again, but the ground was flat, safe, stable. She could finally rest. "You made it," he said softly. "No," she whispered back, meeting his eyes. "We made it." And for the first time that morning, Cal allowed himself a small, quiet smile. Cal stayed kneeling beside Elena for a moment, letting her catch her breath. Her face was pale, but she was awake, alert, and trying to stay strong. The wind blew softly across the ridge, carrying the cool smell of morning grass and dust. For a few seconds, everything was quiet, except for their breathing and the distant sound of cattle moving somewhere far below. Elena tried to sit up a little, but the movement sent a sharp ache up her leg. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. Cal saw her effort and gently stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. "Don't push yourself," he said softly. "We're not in a race." She nodded, though frustration flickered in her eyes. Elena wasn't used to depending on someone else. Her job required long walks, heavy equipment, strange weather, and tough conditions. She had always been proud of managing everything alone. Now, stuck on the ground with a leg she couldn't move without pain, she felt helpless, and she hated that feeling. Cal saw that emotion even without her saying a single word. He had seen it before, pride fighting with the need for help. He respected people who tried to be strong, but he also knew strength sometimes meant letting someone carry the weight. He pulled out a small metal bottle from his bag and held it to her lips. "Just water," he told her. "Small sips." She drank slowly, feeling the coolness soothe her dry throat. The world felt a little clearer afterward. She handed the bottle back and took a deeper breath. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Cal stared at her for a moment, almost surprised. "Trouble? You came to do your job. Things happen. The land isn't always friendly." She looked down at her leg, still lying at an odd angle. "I should have been more careful." "Maybe," he said. "But maybe I should have warned you about this ridge. I've walked it 100 times, but that doesn't mean you would see the same things I do." He paused. "So don't blame yourself?" The sincerity in his voice made her swallow hard. For a man who didn't talk much, his words carried weight. She realized then that he was not angry, not annoyed, not even impatient. He was simply focused on keeping her safe. Cal checked her leg more closely now. He didn't press hard. He didn't move anything sharply. He used gentle pressure with his fingers along her ankle, the side of her calf, the curve of her knee. He watched her face carefully each time he touched a new spot. She winced in some areas, but nodded when he asked if she could handle it. "Nothing looks broken," he said finally, though his voice was still careful. "But you're not walking on it today, maybe not tomorrow either." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. That wasn't the news she wanted, but she appreciated the truth. She always preferred honesty over false comfort. "What now?" she asked. Cal looked toward the horizon. The line shack was miles away, and the storm clouds forming in the distance told him the day would not stay calm for long. He knew the land better than most people alive. He could smell the coming rain before he saw it, and the scent carried warning. "We need shelter," Cal said. "The shack is the closest. It'll take time to get there. And the weather might turn rough, but staying out here isn't safe." He stood up and walked to his horse, patting its neck gently. The animal leaned into his touch. Cal loosened the saddle strap and tied some equipment to make more space. Elena watched him work. Every movement he made was practiced, smooth, done with quiet confidence. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't unsure. He had the attitude of someone who had been in difficult situations before and always found a way out. When he returned to her, she tried to smile, though her face was tight with pain. "You're really going to carry me the whole way?" "You bet I am," Cal replied, meeting her eyes. She let out a small laugh despite the situation. "You make it sound easy." "It won't be," he admitted, "but we'll manage." He slipped his arms under her once again, lifting her slowly. This time she held on to him, gripping the fabric of his shirt to steady herself. The pressure on her leg sent a warm, throbbing ache up her side, and she sucked in a breath. "You're hurting me," she whispered again, not accusing, simply describing the truth. "I know," he murmured, "but it's the only way to move you right now. I'm trying, Elena. I really am." And she could feel that he meant every word. He carried her to the horse and helped her settle sideways across the saddle, careful to support her injured leg. He placed blankets beneath her and adjusted them until her position looked as comfortable as possible. "I'll walk beside you," he said. "The horse knows me. She'll be gentle." Elena wasn't afraid of the horse, but she could feel how vulnerable she was. Cal seemed to sense that too. He rested his hand lightly on her arm before they started moving. "You're safe," he said simply. The journey began slowly. Cal walked beside the horse, one hand on the reins, the other ready to steady Elena if she slipped. The wind picked up, brushing against her face and carrying the scent of coming rain. They moved across the open land, step by steady step. Elena watched the world pass by from her unsteady seat. She had never noticed how the ground rolled softly in waves, how the grass bowed under the wind, how the sunlight formed silver lines on the edge of distant hills. Pain made everything sharper, the sounds, the colors, the smell of dust. Cal glanced up at her often. "How are you holding up?" "It hurts," she admitted, "but I'm okay." "You're tougher than most folks I've met," he said quietly. She smiled a little. "You don't know me well enough to say that." "I know enough," he replied. After a while, the sky darkened. A soft rumble echoed in the distance, like a long breath from the sky. Cal looked upward. "We need to pick up the pace," he said. "Storm's coming faster than I thought." Elena tightened her hold on the saddle horn. The horse sensed the shift in Cal's energy and moved more quickly, though still carefully. The wind grew cooler, sweeping her hair across her face. "Tell me if it gets too much," Cal said, walking faster. "It's all right," she told him, though her leg pulsed with pain at each step. Cal didn't say anything after that, but his focus sharpened. He kept close, guiding the horse through safer paths. The ridge fell behind them, replaced by uneven land and scattered rocks. Elena felt every tiny movement beneath her. But she kept her gaze on Cal. His presence made everything less frightening. Thunder rolled again, louder this time. She flinched a little, not from fear, but from the sudden sound. "You don't like storms?" Cal asked gently. "I like watching them," she said, "but not being stuck in one." "Well, you won't be stuck," he promised. "I'll get you inside before it hits." There was something in his tone that made her believe him fully, something steady, grounded, powerful in a quiet way. They continued moving. The storm clouds grew heavier, darker. The scent of rain filled the air, strong and cold. The wind pushed harder, and small bits of dust lifted off the ground. Elena shivered. Cal noticed instantly and removed his coat, draping it around her shoulders. "You need it more," he said when she tried to protest. "Won't you be cold?" "I'll be fine," he answered simply, and she believed that too. The first drop of rain landed on her cheek like a cold tear, then another, then many. The storm had begun, soft but steady. They were still far from the shack, but Cal didn't slow down. If anything, he became more determined, guiding them through the rough land with skill she admired deeply. Even in pain, even in fear, she felt something else: trust. Cal Turner carried it in his simple words, in the steadiness of his hands, in the way he never left her side. She didn't know what waited at the shack or how long her recovery would be. But she knew one thing clearly. She wasn't facing the storm alone. The storm had slowed by the time night settled around the old line shack. The wind still moved across the land with a steady hiss, but the loud thunder had faded into the distance. Cal had made sure Elena was warm, wrapped in blankets on the small bunk inside the shack, while he kept the fire alive in the old metal stove. The room smelled of wood smoke, old pine boards, and quiet memories that seemed to live in the walls. Elena lay still, her leg propped carefully. The pain had dulled but returned in waves whenever she shifted too much. Still, she felt more at ease now than she had the entire day. Maybe it was the warmth, maybe it was the stillness of the shack, or maybe it was Cal, his presence, his patience, the way he kept checking on her without making her feel weak. He had given her some water and a few crackers from his pack. The simple food tasted better than she expected, maybe because of how hungry she had been. After she ate, silence filled the room again. A comfortable kind of silence, one that didn't pressure her to talk or pretend she was fine. Cal finally sat down on a wooden stool near the stove. His hat hung on a nail behind him, and his hair was damp from the rain. He looked tired, but not in a defeated way. more like someone who had carried a heavy weight for a long time, and finally set it down. Elena watched him quietly. She had seen the strength he carried on the outside. But now, in the soft firelight, she noticed something else. An old sadness in his eyes, something deep and quiet. She had felt it before, in the way he spoke so carefully, in the way he avoided talking about himself. There was a story behind that silence, one she had never expected to learn. "Cal," she said softly. He lifted his eyes to her. "Yeah?" "Earlier, on the ridge," she said slowly. "When you told me strength was the only force you know, what did you mean?" She hesitated, then added gently, "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." Cal stared into the fire instead of answering right away. The flames reflected in his eyes, making them look warmer, but also more distant. He took a slow breath, the kind people take when deciding whether to open a door they've kept shut for a long time. "You ever lose someone you cared about?" he finally asked. Elena nodded softly. "Yes, I lost my grandfather a few years ago. It was very hard for me." Cal gave a small nod as if appreciating her honesty before offering his own. "I lost my brother," he said. "Long time ago. But it still feels close some days." Elena's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry." He didn't respond to the sympathy. He wasn't brushing it away. He simply didn't know what to do with it. "He was younger than me, wild in a way I never was. He did everything fast, rode fast, decided fast, trusted fast." Cal's voice lowered. "I always thought I could protect him. I thought if I stayed strong enough, loud enough, sure enough, I could keep him safe from anything." The fire cracked softly, filling the silence that followed. Elena waited. She didn't rush him. She knew that some stories had to travel slowly from the heart to the mouth. "One day," Cal continued, still staring at the flames, "he took a horse out during a storm. He thought he could beat it, thought he knew the land better than the weather." His jaw tightened. "I told him not to go. He didn't listen." Elena could hear the pain behind those words, years of regret heavy on a single sentence. "I went after him," Cal said quietly, but the land had changed under the rain. The creek swelled fast. The ground turned soft. His horse slipped, and by the time I reached him, his voice grew rougher, softer at the same time. "I wasn't strong enough to pull him out before he..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Elena blinked back the sting in her eyes. She understood now why he moved the way he did, why he carried her with such determination, why he refused to leave her behind even for a second. He wasn't just helping her, he was fighting a memory that had shaped him into a man who believed he had to be unbreakable. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, this time not as sympathy, but as understanding. Cal finally looked at her. "That day taught me something I wish I hadn't learned. When things go wrong out here, speed and strength are the only chances you get. If you hesitate, you lose someone." He leaned back slightly, the stool creaking under him. "Since then, I've leaned on force. Not the kind that hurts people, just the kind that pushes everything forward. Get it done. Don't wait. Don't think too long. Just act." Elena absorbed every word. It all made sense now. The way he carried her, the firmness in his voice when he said they needed to move, the urgency in his steps as the storm approached. Cal lived with the idea that hesitation cost lives. "You saved me today," she said gently. "You didn't hesitate." He shook his head slowly. "I hurt you in the process." "You didn't hurt me," she said softly. "The fall hurt me. The land hurt me. You carried me out." He let the words sink in for a long moment. He wasn't the kind of man who believed compliments easily, but something in her tone made it hard for him to ignore. Elena watched his face relax just a little, the tension in his shoulders easing. "You know," she added, "strength isn't just force. You kept checking on me the whole time. You didn't rush blindly. You moved slow when I needed slow. That's strength, too." Cal looked down at his hands, as if seeing them in a new way. "I don't know if I'm gentle enough for that kind of strength," he admitted quietly. "You were gentle with me," she said. "More than you think." The room grew warm, not just from the fire, but from the honesty shared between them. Elena felt closer to him than she expected to feel toward someone she had met only days ago. There was something grounding about Cal Turner, his steady voice, his protective nature, his hidden softness beneath the rough edges. She shifted slightly, letting out a small breath when her leg protested. Cal immediately leaned forward. "You okay?" "Yes," she said. "Just a little ache. It's nothing." He watched her for another moment, making sure she was truly all right. Only then did he relax again. Outside, the wind brushed against the wooden walls like a soft hand. The rain had turned light, tapping gently on the roof. The glow of the fire danced across the room, giving everything a warm, safe feeling. Elena found herself studying Cal again, but not in the way she had studied him for her photography project. This was different. She saw the man behind the strong silence, the grief he carried, the loyalty he lived by, the heavy love he had once held for his brother. And now, she saw something new, too, the way he cared for her without saying it out loud. "Cal," she said softly, "you didn't fail today. Not even a little." He lifted his eyes again, slower this time. "Feels like I came close. But you didn't," she smiled gently. "Because you were strong in all the right ways." Cal didn't smile, but something shifted in his eyes. A light, a softness, a quiet acceptance of her words. He stood up slowly, walked toward her, and adjusted her blanket so her shoulders were fully covered. "Try to sleep," he said. "You'll feel better after some rest." She nodded. "Will you rest too?" "I will," he promised, "after I make sure the fire stays steady." She knew he meant more than the fire. He meant he wouldn't let anything harm her. Not the storm, not the cold, not the loneliness of the land. Cal Turner was the kind of man who stayed awake so others could sleep easy. As she closed her eyes, listening to the gentle sounds of rain and fire, she felt safe. Not because the shack was strong, not because the storm had passed, but because Cal was sitting just a few feet away, keeping watch. And for the first time since her fall, Elena felt peace. The morning came slowly, with soft light pushing gently through the cracks in the wooden walls. The storm had passed completely, leaving the world fresh and quiet. The air inside the shack felt warmer than the night before, filled with the calm glow of a new day. Elena woke before she opened her eyes fully, aware of the gentle stiffness in her leg and the comforting warmth of the blankets around her. For a moment she forgot where she was, the memory of the fall, the storm. And Cal carrying her through the cold land came back piece by piece. She opened her eyes and saw him sitting near the door, leaning against the wall, his hat pulled low over his eyes. He had fallen asleep sitting up as if he had been fighting sleep until the last moment. Elena watched him quietly. His breathing was slow and steady. His arms were crossed loosely over his chest, and his boots were muddy from the long walk yesterday. Even in sleep, he had a protective stillness around him. She smiled a little, appreciating the sight. Few people made her feel safe simply by being in the same room. She tried to sit up, moving slowly so she wouldn't wake him. Her leg ached, but not as sharply as before. The swelling had gone down a little because of the cold night. She adjusted her blanket and took a deep breath. The smell of the ashes in the stove told her the fire had gone out a long time ago. She didn't want to disturb him, but the tiny crack of the bunk frame shifting beneath her weight was enough. Cal's eyes opened immediately. He didn't move all at once. Instead, he lifted his head slowly, blinking away the fog of sleep. "You're awake," he said, voice deep and soft from resting. "So are you," she replied with a faint smile. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little." He stretched his neck carefully. "Enough." "You should have taken the bunk," she said. "You needed rest more than I did." He shook his head. "You needed it more. That's what matters." Elena didn't argue. She didn't have to. Cal was not someone who changed his choices after making them. And part of her felt grateful, more than she could express, to know he had stayed close the entire night. The quiet between them felt warm, filled with unspoken understanding, the kind that doesn't need explanation. After a minute, Cal stood up slowly, went to the stove, and checked the firebox. "I'll get us some heat going," he said, grabbing a few pieces of dry wood from the corner. He stacked them carefully, struck a match, and coaxed the flames back to life. Elena watched him, noticing every small gesture, how he moved with patience, how he avoided sudden motions around her, how he kept glancing her way to make sure she wasn't in discomfort. It touched her more deeply than she expected. When the fire was finally burning again, he walked back to her side. "How's your leg feeling?" he asked gently. "A bit better." She tried bending it slightly, and though it hurt, it didn't send sharp pain through her like before. "Still bad, but manageable." "That's good," he said. "We'll keep it rested until the others get here." She looked up sharply. "Others?" He nodded. "I radioed in before you woke up. They're sending a small team to pick us up. Should be here in a few hours." Elena let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Thank you." He shrugged lightly. "It's nothing." But she knew it wasn't nothing. Cal Turner was the type of man who always acted as if the hardest things he did were just part of a day's work. The hours passed gently. They talked about small things at first. Her photography work, the animals she had followed in the past, the places she had traveled to. Cal listened with more interest than she expected. He asked questions quietly, carefully, as if trying to picture her world in his mind. Then he told her stories of the ranch, stories filled with dust, early mornings, long days, and the beauty hidden in simple routines. Not all his stories were happy, but all of them were honest. She realized something while listening to him. Cal saw the world in a way she hadn't noticed before. He saw danger, yes, but he also saw loyalty, responsibility, and quiet beauty in the most ordinary moments. "How long have you been here?" she asked softly. "Most of my life," he said. "Left for a little while, but the land has a way of calling you back." "Do you ever regret staying?" He looked surprised by the question, then thoughtful. "No," he said finally. "The land is hard. Life out here is hard, but it's real. Every choice you make matters. I guess that keeps me grounded." Elena nodded, understanding more than before why Cal had become the man he was. Strong, steady, protective, a man shaped by storms and open skies. "You'd make a good storyteller," she teased gently. He huffed a quiet laugh. "Never thought of myself that way." "You should," she said honestly. "You speak in a way that makes people trust you." Cal's eyes softened slightly. "You trust me?" "I think I've trusted you from the moment you reached me on that slope." He lowered his gaze, something thoughtful crossing his expression. "I'm glad you did." The fire warmed the room, and the morning sunlight blended with its glow, casting soft shadows on the wooden floor. Elena felt peaceful, even with the pain in her leg. Peaceful, and strangely reluctant for the rescue team to arrive too soon. After a while, Cal stepped outside to check the weather. The storm had washed the land clean. The air felt crisp and cool. Elena watched him through the doorway, how he stood with his hands on his hips, scanning the horizon like he belonged to it, like he was part of the sky and the dirt and the wind. He returned inside a few minutes later. "They're close," he said. "I can hear the truck." Elena felt her heart lift and sink at the same time. "That's good," she said, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. Cal noticed. "You ready to go?" "I think so," she said. "Are you?" He looked down at his boots for a moment, then back at her. "It was nice, having someone to talk to in this old place." She smiled softly. "It was nice having someone who cared enough to bring me here." The sound of the truck grew louder as it approached. Cal walked to her side again, lifting her gently from the bunk and helping her sit on the edge. She winced, but the pain was bearable. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders once more. "You'll be all right," he said quietly. "I know," she replied. "Because of you." He held her gaze for a moment, long enough for her to see the emotion he didn't speak out loud, long enough for her to feel something warm press into her chest. When the rescuers finally knocked on the door, Cal stepped back, but stayed close enough to catch her if she slipped. They carried her carefully to the truck, thanking Cal for his quick actions. Elena looked back at him as they lifted her inside. He stood just outside the shack, the wind moving through his hair, his hat in his hand. His eyes followed her, not with worry anymore, but with a quiet, steady warmth. Before the truck door closed, Elena called softly, "Cal, thank you for not giving up on me." His answer was simple, but it held everything she had come to understand about him. "I never will." The door closed gently, and the truck began to move. Elena watched him through the window until he became smaller and smaller, a strong figure standing against the endless land. And she knew, without any doubt, that she would carry the memory of that cowboy, his strength, his silence, his story, long after her leg healed.